when I was in Japan for an extended project, I had an opportunity to visit a lot of the Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples in the country. And that's for a Greek like or geek like me. That's a little bit of a challenge because there are about 80,000 Shinto shrines across the country that are registered, and another 80,000 that are not formally designated. Fortunately, the project didn't last that long. And fortunately, I had one shrine that I visited regularly. That was a little shrine dedicated to Ebisu, one of the seven gods of traditional gods of Japanese fortune. We'll talk more about him later. But just as a context, it's a tiny little place in the middle of the business district in Tokyo, Japanese God of Fortune business district, you get it. Now, if you're from the South like me, you can't help but look at this tiny little area with the trees all, kind of disorganized, organized, and think, what a great place for a barbecue joint. But at any rate, but the Japanese apparently for centuries have had a different idea about how this place should be used. So as you probably know, Shintoism is a religion that's originated in Japan, followed by about 104 million people worldwide. While Shinto is considered a distinct religion, most of my Japanese colleagues didn't really consider it a religion. They really thought about it more as a way of life than it was an explanation for the world. So the main belief in Shinto is the belief in kami, or the worship of kami, Kami. Now, it's a difficult concept for us as Westerners. It doesn't exist in Western thought, but we can use the word spirit, and we'll get close. We're pretty close. All objects are believed to have kami, and that means landscapes, forces of nature, people, animals, both living and dead. A shrine dedicated to a kami can be as small as a space on the bookshelf in your home. And by contrast, there's a shrine dedicated to Mount Fuji as well. So the Ebisu shrine was really a physical reminder of the Shinto values of purity, sincerity, harmony with nature, celebration, and the focus on the here and now. It's really nice to have a place like that. Just to kind of anchor yourself every day. Lots going on, lots to deal with, and so forth. But there's an anchor place that kind of kept life going on what felt like, despite all the turbulence, kind of a straight line. So, of course, sacred places are not always conventional religious places by any means. As the concentration camp at Auschwitz comes to mind. The secret annex where Anne Frank and her family hid out comes to mind. And if you've been like me, you wake up in the wee hours of the dawn and you get out of bed and you get over to the edge of the canyon, freeze your butt off, waiting for the sunrise over the canyon ridge. That too can be a sacred place. So I'm sure you had some places come to mind as our guided meditation. Sacred places can be any place where we meet something beyond ourselves. So now as you use, we may be turned off by this word sacred. Could be associated with superstitious behavior, ritualized behavior. It could be associated with even bad experience in a formal religious setting. In any event, bear with me, try it out. I think it's a good word. I think it's a useful word. And if it's not part of your vocabulary, let me encourage you to bring it in. If it is, keep it there. It's drawn from the Latin word sacra, which basically means set apart. And there are three components, I think, of being set apart. The first is really obvious, the physical. But then it gets a little hard, right? Sometimes sacred spaces are very simple, sometimes very ornate, sometimes very beautiful, sometimes very deliberately not beautiful. There's no defining characteristic of a sacred place. As a matter of fact, the only thing that characterizes them is they're not like the places we go to normally in the execution of our daily living. Doesn't look like the grocery store. It looks different. But beyond that, all bets are off. Next, such spaces are set apart by different patterns of behavior. Things we do remind us we're in a different place. We might light candles, we might sing songs, we might do readings and other actions. These are actions that we normally do in a daily life. Sometimes just pausing and listening is a way of being very special in different behavior. And finally, sacred spaces are set apart by the way in which they orient us. They enable us to connect with something outside of ourselves, something greater than ourselves. It's not the grocery list, right? It's big items like world peace, wonder, transformation, and personal fulfillment. So set apart physically, behaviorally, and by intention. The physical and the behavioral ones are the ones that slap us in the face. And they come to mind immediately when you think about a special place. A cathedral, for instance. You know immediately it doesn't belong on that, it doesn't look like the gas station, whatever. And you know the things that are going on there are different. What's harder to see, but the most critical thing to see, is the intention of the space, the way in which that space allows us to reorient beyond ourselves. Now, when we did the guided meditation earlier, we find out about your sacred spaces. When we put this program together, we basically remembered how important and personal sacred space was to every person. So we have this two-step process. Next week, we hit a forum service to give people the chance to talk about their space. It'll be a great place to hear and appreciate our experiences. Joseph Campbell reminds us that such places let us experience our own will and our own intention and our own wish. That's a recipe for transformation, no? So how did that visit change you? And when you walked out, how were you different? Share more next week. But the guided meditation, we deliberately said, prepare to leave that space, walking out. That's probably the most critical moment. How do you walk out? What's different about you? Next week, you can talk about your own personal experiences. Let me give you some starters and see what you think about them. First, you might have experienced a new perspective on yourself. You might have had a chance to listen to yourself away from the competing demands for your attention. It might have been a place to gain clarity and insight about you. Alternatively, or together, you might have experienced a kind of special spiritual connection. That could be what you experience as a personal, physical, a higher authority, a spiritual higher authority, or your own inner self. And you might have also experienced healing and renewal, a place to process the inevitable setbacks, a place to confirm direction, a place to recharge and rejuvenate. And finally, in that experience to you, you may have experienced community and belonging. So sacred places can be gathering places for like-minded individuals to come together and share an experience made more powerful by being with others. So a sacred place can be a place where you saw it consistently, because it's some place to anchor yourself. It could be a place that had very different meanings based on what your needs were at the time. The important thing, it was a critical counterpoint to life. It's something that makes life richer, but does not replace it. The metaphor I use, and you'll hear me go through this, in the cathedral, immediately the cathedral, you see, it doesn't look, physical, behavioral, and intentional, cues itself in as it's different from that which is around us. The other point I'll make is, there are exceptions to this, obviously, but the point I'll make is that when you don't live in the cathedral, you leave the cathedral. You go to the cathedral for an experience that allows you to live your life, better, differently, more richly, more impactfully. And so that's why, to me, that critical point is when you turn around and you leave the place, whatever that place was. So it could be tempting to think about sacred places as some place that does something to us. We walk in, the lights come on, and the music plays, or whatever. It's like an EV charger that works, right? But that misses, I think, a critical point. I think we are engaged, we're critically engaged, and participate in the sacredness of a space. As deeply involved participants, we have a lot that we can do in what I'll call a relationship with that space. Let me give you a couple ideas. Just see what you think. So First of all, I think we can be intentional with our visit to that space, whatever that is. Could be a specific goal in mind, a prayer, a wish, or simply a desire to connect with our inner self or higher power. What's on your heart? What's on your mind? What journey are you on, or what path are you trying to find? Next, we can bring our whole selves, all of us, fully present and aware of the moment. Don't try to solve the pesky work problem, plan lunch, worry about any of the things that are pounding at our mental doors. And there are many of those things. Instead, pay attention. Pay attention to our own thoughts, emotions, body, and environment. I think we can also be open to the newness of the experience. Every experience is new, even if we've seen it before, right? Not much to look at, seen nicer sunsets before. Try approaching your experience with the beginner's mind, child's mind, to re-unlock that sense of wonder. And finally, we can connect with the narrative. There are also always, often, stories or mythologies that have grown up around the significance of a place. And we don't usually put a lot of stock in the actual, physical, detailed enactment of a mythology or so forth, but they do tell us a story, don't they? And we can connect with what the narrative is telling us. It's often a story about core values like respect, humility, hope, love, and justice. So being an old god in centuries, Ebisu's had a lot of stories grow up around him. So just want to catch us up. It turns out that the story of Ebisu is that he was born terribly deformed. And so it's just kind of funny because you see the pictures of him. He always looks like the fat Buddha with a huge fish because he's prosperous, right? Caught a big fish. He's always smiling and laughing, but he's born terribly deformed. So the stories around Ebisu were always around how he worked to overcome those deformations, many of which he did. One he did not. He was deaf. So that meant that when the other gods had the big godly council meeting, they all got together. And he was one of the top 7, by the way. So when the other gods were doing their thing and making big decisions, he missed the call. This is before internet, before email, by the way. So you have to kind of put it in context. And so he wasn't there. He's never there. And what that meant, that, speak up a bit. I got the lavalier. Don't tell me. That not working? Okay, good enough. All right, fair enough. Okay, good enough. So anyway, so Evans always missed the council meetings. That's a terrible thing. But what that meant was when the other gods were busy doing their council god things, Ebisu was always available to answer the plight or the call of people. A story. Every place has a story. Connect with the narrative, connect with the story. And it usually has something to do with values, something that calls us to be our better self. It's a two-way relationship. We can be engaged and participate in the sacredness of the space. We can make our experience of sacred places, however we find them, and however we need them, richer with the good they do to us. Which brings us to the final question, right? You knew there was a final question in all this. And that is this place a sacred place set apart? Many of our traditional Christian colleagues will use the word church to refer to their sacred place. We're different, as you use. We're always different, right? You tend to use the word hall to describe the physical building. We reserve the word church for the body of believers, the people, not the building. So hall, church. For us, it's the people that make this place set apart. And as a result, making this place a special place isn't about fresh paint, jazzing up the music, getting better speakers, although all those things are wonderful things. It's the narrative that's being created here that makes this a sacred place. What narrative are we creating now? How will that narrative persist during the week, and how will it sustain us going forward? So our narrative, so we don't have centuries, like Ebisu had, to build up these long stories. But our narrative may start with a covenant, not a set of beliefs handed down to us or a set of promises, but a set of promises we share. I think our narrative would have to include how we articulated a set of powerful promises, how we tried to live up to those promises, and we often failed, but how we became better and we made our world better because of those promises to one another. Our narrative would probably also include characters in the story. Makes it interesting, right? That's you and me. It's what we bring to this place, our hopes and dreams and unfinished business. It's how we support each other in our collective and individual goals. Each of us contributes to the narrative behind the specialness of this place. And of course, no narrative is complete without deeds or struggled. What are we concerned about? Looking out for one another, environmental justice, social justice, developing our own potential. We'll have tragedies and setbacks, but we also have hope, joy, and successes. Each meeting is a chance to evolve our narrative about this place. Each new friendship, each parting of old members, each board meeting, each time we work together, our times together collectively create the narrative that make this a set apart place. One for reflection, inspiration, and connection. So if you suffered through me before, you know that I'll do a little recap at this point. But just by way of reminder, next week, Catherine is going. Yep, Catherine is going to, probably at the talkback session, say a few words about what you're going to do. But next week we'll come back to this topic because it's the personal stories of the people in this room. It's part of the narrative, right? The personal stories that are so important. But let me give a brief summary, and then we'll provide some time for initial comments and observations. Sacred places are places that are set apart. Their physical nature, patterns of behavior, and how they orient us. They enable us to step away from our normal duties to reflect, gain new perspective, celebrate community, and to connect with something beyond ourselves. Sacred place can be some place we anchor ourselves on consistently, or it can be a place of refuge or a place of inspiration, a place we use just for a transition point. In any event, it's a counterpoint to the normal course of life. It's not life itself. It's the thing that we use to make life richer and better. It's the opportunity for transformation. And that transformation, like all good transformations, it's a two-way prospect. We can be intentional in our time, whatever space is special to us. We can bring our whole presence to the moments we have there. We can be open to the newness of the experience, and we can connect with the story of that place, whatever that story is and whatever it has to teach us. And of course, this place can be a sacred place, a place set apart. It's the narrative that's being created here that makes this place special. Our promises, our personal stories, our setbacks, our hopes, and our dreams. As Campbell noted, your sacred space is the place that you can find yourself again and again. They aren't just places to visit. They are places in which to be transformed. And we're the key players in that transformation. So be it.